Hey guys, it's Class Wars time for the month of March 2015. I'm potted up to 816k BR at the moment with level 5 pots and the regular scrolls. I didn't use any level 6 pots or the advanced scrolls. Last month I figured out that I don't really need it to get into the top 16. That said, I still make sure that I have my light and dark pet on for prelims. Because that's kind of just like free BR without using pots and scrolls. They are higher BR than the non-light dark sylphs when everything else is equal, you know, all maxed out with Sepulchrum and Mahara and whatnot. And so for me, that's just an easy way to make sure that my BR is as high as it can go at the moment. And I decided to go with my light sylph as my main one this time around. I mentioned this in my overview for this month, but it's mostly just to lower my resistance to dark as much as possible to see how much damage I'm really taking. And in finals, it should be, I mean, slightly higher, but not amazing. You know, any sylph other than another dark sylph is going to take negative dark resistance, so the non-light dark sylphs have minus 100 dark resistance, and the light sylphs have minus 200. So it's bad, but I just wanted to get a feel for how much damage I could possibly take. I think it's actually kind of fun, and if I weren't lagging so bad this time around, I think it would have been more entertaining. So maybe I can try this again next month for prelims under better conditions. I am just, even you can see it already at the beginning, I was just plagued with lag problems, and I really couldn't figure out what was going on. I did discuss with a friend afterward a bunch of different things that I could do to my computer to make the recording slightly more tolerable, and I tested it out. It should be better for finals, but I think part of it is also just game lag. You know, I didn't have I at least went, you know, a few months where my recording for Class Wars was more tolerable, and now it just picked up again and is really bad. So it does cost me a match later on, maybe a match and a half or two. Anyway, it was really terrible. That said, but yeah, a lot of AoE power with Athena, and also does a ton of damage to the troops because most people don't have a ton of light resistance. And again, I'll mention, you know, I should probably mention this every single Class Wars video, but the resistances that you have for your player also apply to your sylphs. So if you have a lot of dark resistance, that's why, like, if I have a dark pet and then I try to kill some of these troops, their troops have a ton of dark resistance as well, and so that makes it very hard to kill troops with a dark pet at the moment. Even if it's defensively nice because your dark resistance is higher, and so you have more resistance against other dark players. It's not a great choice here for me anyway, not for finals. But for prelims, I think any of the sylphs would be okay. Still a lot of Hercules here. I only have one Electro Crystal on at the moment, which became pretty horrifying later on when I realized I was fighting a very strong player who ended up bringing Herc. So I need to think about what my resistances are going to be for finals. I had been planning not to bring any Electro, but now I probably have to bring a little at least, just in case. Here I was hoping to kill her before her sylphs were up, but not quite the case, but that's okay. I think this formation is a little bit strange to put one of your sylphs up front. I think that's very dangerous because so many people play with a dark sylph, and the dark sylphs can then heal off the tanking sylph very easily because your sylphs, you know, don't have as much defense as you do. Server age thing. Oh yeah, some of my guildies were saying, oh, you know, like, I think it's kind of ridiculous that people with, you know, these orange sylphs, you know, don't have a lot of BR and whatnot. I think it's really a caching difference and a server age difference. You know, if you're like going into Wartune now, or, you know, in the past, like, I don't know, 8 months or something, you know, you're not going to be able to cache as many mounts just because they aren't all available. And so I think, you know, these days, after mounts, what do you cash? Most people go with sylph. A friend of mine was saying that he would go with gems, which is probably a good bet, even though I kind of think it's horrifying to think about cashing gems. Maybe now it would be worth it. So yeah. So here's my fight with Arlie, the one that I was just absolutely mortified. She has a second evolution of Hercules, or of Eve, I guess. It's the second evolution, but the mythic Electro pet, and so I was very worried because I took out the vast majority of my Electro resistance. Luckily, I do have one expert Electro dimension, so that does give a bit of an Electro boost. And this is kind of a funny fight. You know, I know that my buddy Castaway has been in Arlie's ear as far as how to PvP here, and he's also given me some recommendations, so I have a decent idea of how she's going to play as it goes on. Previously, I had seen Arlie kind of struggle with PvP play, and so the fact that she's waiting so long to sylph, I can tell that my friend Castaway has been telling her to wait. And I do think it's better to sylph second, but I was looking at the clock pretty carefully. I knew that I wanted to get into sylph. If she doesn't sylph, I still want to go probably right before the 100% increase kicks in, because I probably can stay in sylph mode for close to a minute, maybe a little bit less. And if I go first and she waits like she does here, that means my Medusa will steal, and so it'll cost her another round. So really still dawdling. That was mostly due to lag, but I get into sylph mode. I use this Divine Prayer first usually, because it does increase the amount of damage taken just a little bit, but it is a debuff. So just a really laggy mess here. But because I did get into sylph mode, I have an advantage. Here she finally gets in, but the timer is about to run out in about, well, now 20 seconds by the time that she's actually up. But again, you can see, I think her shock chain ends up being able to hit me. Even though shock chain is a random hit, yeah, it gets me. So that's dealing a ton of damage, and so yeah, no, kind of regretted not having any Electro Crystals. Had Arlie gotten a little bit more aggressive with her sylph mode and sylphed right along me, I would have been in more trouble. Here, this really upsets me. You know, I get out and it says the final round will be in 179 seconds, and so I missed the entire 7th round of Class Wars Preliminaries. So it was really frustrating to me. I guess what happened is because the fight with Arlie went for 3 minutes, or close to 3 minutes, and I lagged so bad getting out of the fight that it didn't put me into my next one, or made it seem like I had disconnected or something, even though I didn't disconnect. I was just lagging, and so I missed an entire round, and so it counted as a miss, not as a loss. And missing a fight in Class Wars is way worse than losing a fight. You know, for a win you get 270 points, for a loss you get 135, and for a miss you get 0. And so basically at this point I'm at the equivalent of having two losses already. And so my draw gets a lot easier here. You know, I have a player who's at a huge BR disadvantage. I would guess at least like 300k BR on this person, if not more. And so yeah, my draw all of a sudden got really easy, which is not a good thing. You know, it's not as fun. At 2, it doesn't let me practice as much. If I do well towards the later rounds, I'll see some of the other stronger players and be able to test out my skills, work on my PvP, and so yeah, it was really pretty frustrating. I was surprised that it didn't just launch me into the next fight. I have another close call against a player who I have a big BR advantage on, but who I struggled against anyway, just because of the lag and whatnot, and And yeah, so I was very concerned after fighting him that I would lose another 2 rounds or the same thing would happen. Luckily, it was just that one time, but I need to go at least 11-4. I can get in because of my BR with a record of 11-4, but really comfortably, without having to rely on your BR, would be a record of 12-3. So I really felt like at most I could take 1 loss. This is a really classic combo as far as sylphs go. I mean, as classic as it can get. After this is what, only the 3rd time we've done this with the sylph troops? 3rd? Or is it 4th? Alright, don't hold me to that. I'm terrible with timelines. But, you know, Dark Pet is your main. But really, main sylph I think can vary a lot. But as far as the troop sylphs, I think Medusa Triton is really, really strong. You know, if you're feeling a little bit more aggressive about awakening steals, you can go with 2 Medusas, and I heard that Lala played with 3 in prelims. I haven't talked to her recently, but I think that sounds really fun. That's something I wanted to do at one point. I think what gets really scary and why 3 Medusas sounds so threatening is, you know, a 1 Medusa difference when it comes to teams is not too bad. 1 awakening steal is not going to be the end of the world as far as being able to use your Delphic and, you know, have a comfortably long sylph mode, whatever. Here I get Alexis, I think, before the troops die. But when you're talking about a 2 Medusa difference, then it gets pretty big. And so, you know, if your opponent has 0 and you have 1, it's not as big of an advantage if you're your opponent having 0 Medusas and you have 2. Or same with like 1-3. But you know, the difference between 3 Medusas and having 2 Medusas, I don't think it's that big of a deal. So we'll see, you know, how that goes. Wow, that lag was really bad. Here we have another Hercules user. A 5-star sylph, but it looks like the BR is still pretty weak. And so yeah, it's really taking quite a while for me to recover those points that I lost, or that round that I lost, just because, you know, I can tell from my draw that I'm still facing people who are taking a bunch of early losses, and so yeah, anyway, it's frustrating. Well, that was a regeneration that didn't hit for, well, didn't hit for enough to get me 50,000 HP back. That's interesting. So maybe I can still up my regeneration astral eventually. If there's still, you know, I thought that I almost always get 50 back. I guess it was close enough. I am using a Will Destroyer at the moment, so I have some extra block on, which is nice. I really enjoy that. I also made it easier for me to switch between Will Destroyer and crit. So actually right after Class Wars I switched back to a crit build, and it was not a big deal. It didn't cost me a lot of gold or anything like that. So I'm really enjoying that aspect. I think, you know, Titan War is coming up eventually, or it's supposed to. It's like 2 months late or something like that. But you know, whenever that shows up, there will be a group PvP thing. So the more big PvP things that they put out, the more I'm going to want to be able to switch to a Will Destroyer with some degree of ease. And so I'm kind of trying to set myself up that way. Here's another one of my tougher fights. Again, somebody with a similar fighting sensibility when he's playing with 2 Medusas, which is something I like. And he's also the hubby of Castaway, who's a good friend of mine and who gives me some PvP recommendations. We play a little bit differently, but overall, I think since we have similar influences, you know, we're both waiting to sylph. Here, I was very worried about my lag and going to 3 minutes, and so I end up actually sylphing earlier than I would. So I could tell, you know, I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, well, he's probably going to wait me out. So I might as well try and just get the drop on him, hope that I'm dealing a lot of light damage and that it works out. I thought maybe if I sylph and my Medusa gets a steal out first, that I might be okay and would prevent him from going into sylph mode an extra round. That aspect of the plan did not go over so well since he sylphs right here, and I don't think my Medusa gets a steal out before he sylphs. Yeah, so my Medusa doesn't do a skill yet. But the one comfortable thing about Athena, I will say, is that because you have so many AoEs, everything except for that one basic attack is an AoE, and so it's very easy to wipe out the troops, because you're never worried about, like, oh, making sure that I get in enough AoE power. You know, the Dark Pets only have 2 AoEs. I guess if you use a Water Pet, you have 2. Medusa, you can have 3, which is nice. But with light sylphs, it's really easy. So there, his troops are taking a ton of damage. They each took over 500k, and so there I pretty much was like, okay, I just gotta live, and I'll be okay, because he's taking so much damage. And he did kill my troops, but I think I probably dealt more to his than he did to me. He did to mine, I mean. Definitely towards endgame at most, you know, you'll do a heal rune, but I don't like in endgame having to use full heals because they take up a whole turn, and yeah, I think it's more productive to try and just deal damage as long as I can live. So I would rather heal rune toward the end than use a skill, and that's something to keep in mind. You know, always watching the clock. You know, this is not a play to kill event, or, well, it helps if you kill. That's always beneficial, but definitely at the higher levels, and everybody has really big resistance, there's a very good chance that you'll go to 3 minutes, and so yeah, you have to think about dealing damage. Here's Thing 1, who's someone I see in BG all the time. Been around a long time. There was a Thing 2 at one point, but I don't know what happened to Thing 2, so now there's just only one Thing. She has no Medusa, though. I really think it's worth it. Well, maybe for Thing 1, she might have to worry about BR and trying to get into finals. I'm not totally sure. I imagine she gets into finals, though. And but I think you know, even if it's a BR drop, I think bringing Medusa and Triton is a better bet. But you know, not everybody has those sylphs. Actually, there's some sylph events going on, sylph upgrades, sylph enchant, so I might be able to boost up my Cerberus a bit. I do have an orange sylph for every single sylph now, which is kind of exciting, but now it makes it just like the world is my oyster as far as those second evolutions go, and I get really indecisive. At least for now, I really want to go with the dark one, and so I don't have any second evolutions of sylphs yet because I don't have any divinity stones. So here I managed to eke her out with some of the light damage, I think. My lag's going so crazy that I just end up doing a bunch of different light hits with thinking that I had already cancelled my sylph mode, but yeah, that's Wartune for you, plus my fantastic recording lag. In retrospect, I probably did my skills for the Dark Pet wrong, because I already have Divine Prayer, and I don't think Divine Prayer and that Death Harvest debuff can overlap. I think they're the same thing. I think it's like 5% extra damage taken, as far as my opponent's debuff goes, so I don't think I really needed that skill. Probably could have figured something else out. Maybe led with Devour Soul or something. Not Devour Soul, Devil's Gaze. Here's Ariel. I was really worried about this fight. I knew I would get somebody strong towards the end once my you know, I didn't take any losses up to this point, but I had the equivalent of 2 losses, so I knew once my record finally caught up to people that are stronger, that I would get somebody good and that it would be problematic for me, just because when I have the light sylph on, which is fine, that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the lag. So here I don't get in my guardian rune, so that's a mess. So I think I end up just using a heal. Yeah, well, I mean, once they Delphic me and I can just tell that there won't be something super big to guardian rune against, I'll end up using a heal instead if I miss that guardian rune. But yeah, I think overall I probably still have a winning record against Ariel, and I probably have more BR than she does, so I really should win. But she has snuck in a bunch of wins against me. Not just, I mean, she has probably been the product of me getting 4th place in Class Wars Finals at least a couple of times, because I have taken an offhand loss against her in Finals at least once, if not twice. So this is just a mess. You know, I didn't end up killing her troops, which is always frustrating, but seems I got out of sylph mode pretty quickly. And the moment that happens and she has a Medusa up and I don't, that's just big time trouble. Because the Medusa can steal and prevent me from getting back into sylph mode. So I think she ends up getting a kill here, and you know, we're close to the timer, but she's definitely dealt more damage than I have also, so no matter what, yeah, I mean, she kills me, but even if that had gone to the full timer, I would have been in trouble. What I'm talking about there, but so here's the last round, getting the Joker again. This time I get that Guardian rune out early. You know, I don't mind the early Guardian rune. Everybody's leading with Thunder lately, so I figure even if I use it first, it'll come back up in time for sylph mode, so it's not a big deal. Oh yeah, I was saying I gotta figure out something for before finals because my lag was so bad, which I think I have some of it sorted out, so that's good. Here again, feeling like I'm dealing a lot of damage, so I was feeling pretty good about the fight. And of course I won the time before, so that always is a confidence boost. If you feel yourself healing a lot in Class Wars, not just against people who are stronger than you are, so in this case it's natural for Joker to be healing more than I am, but if you feel like you're the one healing a lot in fights against people of a similar BR, then and you're not bringing a heal rune, I think it's a good idea. I'm actually finding that I'm more comfortable with a heal rune than being super aggressive with something like Amnesia. And lately, especially when I don't have a Dark Pet. If I don't have a Dark Pet, I'm probably always going to bring Heal Guardian. If I have a Dark Pet on, then I'll consider Guardian and Amnesia. Here I'm kind of amazed that I made it into Sylph mode as early as I did. You know, he has 2 Medusas, he Sylphed first. So I think he should have adjusted his Medusa skills or something. Because he could have stolen me, you know, taken my Awakening at least twice before I had made it into Sylph mode. And that would have been really, really tough to recover from. But he's taking a good chunk of damage from this light sylph, so I'm in pretty good shape. I think it's so hard for some of the bigger fights to really figure out who's dealing more damage, because it almost always has to do with how much damage you deal to the troops, and then also, you know, who has a Guardian rune up or a Snowflake or whatever it is. So yeah, it's harder to tell there. But I think I'm getting better at it. I'm not as like 50-50 about it, you know, like it can go either way. Now I have a decent idea of who's gonna win at the end of the fight if a kill doesn't happen. So that's the end of my crazy prelims of just being super frustrated. I hope everybody had a much smoother time than I did, and I know for sure it'll be at least a little bit smoother for finals, so that's good. I end up, I think, placing 11th in prelims. Is probably the lowest prelims ranking that I've had in a really long time, and then I placed 9th in BR, but that's kind of irrelevant because nobody's using their main pots, except for the ones that are really trying to push to get into the top 16 or into finals. So anyway, best of luck to those of you in the finals. I hope everybody enjoyed. Take care and have a very good day.